Okay, if I could get everybody to please say the Pledge of Allegiance with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
All right, thank you guys. Welcome to our 5 o'clock, April 20th, 2020 board work session. We'll jump right into it. First up, we have the Siemens report. It's 2.01 on our agenda tonight. So if we can go ahead and get started with Greg right away.
Hey guys, can you hear me and see me okay?
Yes.
Good deal. I'm going to share my screen with you. Believe you guys should this information in your board packets, but I'm going to go through and kind of walk you through it a little bit. So, just right off the bat, we want to talk about, we want to be respectful of your time and the time of the other presenters tonight. This is going to be pretty high level. This is likely going to feel fairly quick as we move through this stuff, but that's because there's a lot of information to convey. So we'll kind of rock right into it. The first few slides are really an executive summary of the process that's gotten here today. Back in early 2019, the district issued an RFQ, or request for qualifications, for energy services companies to perform IGA, which is an investment grade audit, on district buildings, and then provide recommendations to be implemented through a guaranteed energy savings contract. So 9 companies submitted, and we were selected, and the board unanimously approved our development agreement. Beginning in summer of 2019, actually a little bit before that, we began our auditing and development process by conducting stakeholder interviews and workshops at each building. Upon completion of that, engineering resources, Carrie, were then tasked with providing an infrastructure condition assessment within each building, where major building systems were assessed and then existing conditions were noted. Once those assessments were completed, we began to conduct bi-weekly meetings with the facilities team to get a better understanding of outstanding issues, any sort of maintenance challenges, any sort of problems that they see, which we use to create a more, I guess we'd call it, robust risk assessment picture. As a clearer picture of the district infrastructure condition came into focus, Carrie, and by the way, Carrie, her is also in here. Carrie is our engineer. Just for introductory purposes, I know a lot of you guys know who we are anyway, but just kind of pause for a quick second. My name is Greg Williams. I am a NYFR and North Glendale dad, and Carrie is a NYFR, Robinson, and high school dad. He's the guy with the beard. He's growing a beard for the quarantine. Actually, I think you've always had Carrie. So anyway, Carrie identified, engineered, and developed solutions kind of ranging between $20 to $25 million in critical deferred maintenance, infrastructure improvements, and in energy and operational efficiency enhancements to the buildings. As we kind of move forward into here, I just want to be very clear that the list of critical and infrastructure and deferred maintenance items is extensive, but that's not something that is that's not uncommon within public education facilities around the country. You see this all over the place. So it is not something unique to Kirkwood, obviously, but just the list of them, it was really difficult to prioritize given the sheer number and budget parameters that you have to work within. However, we worked very diligently with the facilities team to produce a prioritized recommendation to address these most critical issues and then to make the most impactful improvements for the district and community. Once that was finished, we then began the process of procuring proposals from multiple vendors, contractors and subcontractors, and then we refined these designs and scopes of work with the facilities team as well as Mr. Ramey to provide a recommended path for implementation, and then also a planned approach to complete the rest of the work that's been identified over time. So you may remember seeing this table previously. This table really reflects the full scope of work that's been identified during this process. As I mentioned before, prioritization has been a challenge, but working with Mr. Ramey and the facilities team, we believe that we've been able to put together a recommendation that really addresses the most critical infrastructure issues that are at the highest risk of failure, measures that really impact the operational and energy efficiencies of the district, and improvements to our buildings to enhance the learning and teaching environments. So when I look at phase one, as I mentioned, we're looking at a phased approach to attacking this issue. We're looking at an energy and operational plus high risk exposure grouping of facility improvement measures. The total cost of the recommendation that we're making here is around $9.6 million. And we've provided a complete breakdown of our project costs in a different format or in a different sheet. Additionally, we've provided a cash flow, and we will continue to update those with the savings that we are guaranteeing. With this project, we're guaranteeing anywhere between $280,000 to $390,000 of annual energy savings, and really taking those savings and reinvesting them within your buildings, right? And what we're trying to do with that reinvestment in buildings is take some of those deferred maintenance issues and hit them sooner rather than later with a more neutral budget impact. Over the course of the 15 years, we're looking at approximately $5.1 million in guaranteed energy savings on this project, which is very, very good. So a few of the enhancements that we're looking at making, indoor environmental enhancements, improving interior lighting quality and exterior lighting quality, and improved indoor air quality as well as more consistent comfort within these buildings for the students. And then also on the operational side, we're looking at increasing the energy efficiency of a lot of the units and a lot of the mechanical systems within the district, optimization of equipment and staffing resources, and then through Advantage Navigator, which is a dashboard that we're providing for the district, we're really going to be providing additional insight on building usage and occupancy. So we have a better idea, or we'll provide a better picture for the district on how the buildings are operating from an energy perspective. And then through our experience, we have the ability to really help with a lot of those operational efficiencies as well. And then reducing reactive maintenance while making sure that the district's facility staff is doing what they're best at, which is really preventative maintenance, and making sure that any sort of emergency repairs and maintenance are done without having to deal with the reactive maintenance of emergency replacement of systems. And then on the financial side, significant reduction in maintenance and operating costs. We don't include a lot of operational savings within our cash flows, mainly because those are work hours, right? But what we're doing is, instead of having Mr. Murphy have 4 guys assigned to replacing lights over the course of a week and working on 5 different units that are operating at 50% efficiency, it allows him to do the preventative maintenance on the units to make sure that those units last longer and operate at a higher efficiency for years to come. As well as capturing lighting implementation and savings, and obviously reducing that risk of emergency repair and replacement. So we're looking at a number of different facility improvement measures. and they're listed over here on the left side of the screen. But what we're going to do is we're going to walk through each of these in just a minute. So after after the project is complete, we look at things not only from an energy and infrastructure condition assessment view, lens, whatever you want to call it, but one of our main tenets in this world is really making sure that we're acting sustainably, and that we look at how the sustainability, or what the sustainability benefits of a project are for the district. On this phase 1 project, we're looking at a 15-year energy reduction of more than 47 million kilowatt hours, which is really the equivalent of removing 88 million passenger vehicles driven for 1 year, right? So the average passenger vehicle, we're removing 88 million of those over the course of 15 years. It's a significant amount of carbon sequestration, more than 35,000 metric tons of CO2 from the environment. So Carrie is going to walk through the different facility improvement measures and the specifics of what we're looking at doing in here. And as you have questions, obviously shout them out on these different recommendations.
Good afternoon, everybody. Just wanted to touch on, so there's, as Greg mentioned, there's the rooftop replacements, and there's also a solution for boiler replacements. Just wanted to group these two together real quick, because those are primarily a capital improvement, not necessarily done purely for energy efficiency. There's a huge capital component to that, and I just wanted to lump them together just because those are very similar, with basically, it's essentially equipment that is aged out purely due to a timeline and its expected life, or due to actually seeing failures, every summer or every winter. I'm having to address them. So as the facility is touching or repairing the equipment more, it ages out essentially. So those together is a little different. But on the rooftop unit, there are 9 units at the high school being replaced, 4 at Kaiser, and 5 at Westchester. And those are complete replacements. That photo you see on your, it's over my right. I'm not sure if it's mirrored or not, but that photo is the unit that was the high school cafeteria, or cafetorium, I think it's called. So it's very similar to that. That was used as the basis of our design for units that are up on steel. But the unit itself is based on an AON unit, and then consistency across the district for controls and so forth. I'm going to move pretty quick just because we have a little bit of tight timeline, but if anybody has any questions as I go through this, I apologize. It's a little quick. There's a lot of information to try to condense down into 20 minutes, but we have a lot more information, and I'll get into it as you guys need more information. So the next 3 slides are essentially, we kind of did this for every district, so for every school and every building in the district. The 3 we have here are Westchester, the high school, and then Kaiser. And we kind of did this as a quick little inventory of the physical condition of it, red being bad, green being good, yellow being kind of on the fence. And as you'd expect, the progression goes from green, yellow to red. So everything yellow eventually will become red, and all the red we've deemed as a piece of an asset, a piece of equipment needing replacement within the next 5 years. Could be 3, could be 2, you could be -1. It should have been replaced last year and it didn't. So we did this for every school and cataloged it. The maps you see in front of you here are for the units being replaced, are being recommended to be replaced as part of this phase 1 with the red dots. And then the next slide after that. So this is a coil cleaning and coating. This is a process that's meant to extend the life of the equipment that's being not replaced. So there's still useful life left in it. Could be 6 years, could be 12 years or longer. So this is a cleaning and a coating that will extend the life of the equipment and reduce the facility's efforts and time to clean the coils moving forward. So it's a little bit of a performance enhancement from its current state. It's not one of those things that make it better than it was when it was new. It essentially will take its current condition and improve it as much as it can up to the point it was when it was brand new. So it's a process that gains back some performance, some efficiency, and lengthens the years left in that unit's life. The next slide is a building weatherization, where we primarily are trying to seal the unintended openings to the outside, under doors, between doors, cracks between the vertical wall and the roof, the horizontal surface. So this provides sealing of those gaps where outside air is coming in, not intended.
And this is being done on a district-wide basis. So we're addressing every building on this with this FEM.
Yep, and thanks, Craig. On the previous slide, the weatherization. I'm sorry, the coil cleaning and coating. That would be all the units that are currently on the roof, that are, except probably the one that was installed. I don't think we have the cafetorium in there, just because that was done last year. But everything else that was remaining, so the yellows and greens, are getting cleaned and coated with that. So it is district-wide. This one is district-wide as well. The lighting here, we may want to come back and visit this once we get through it. There's a lot of information here. So this is a district-wide conversion, a retrofit from existing fixtures to LED. A couple of points I'll make a note. Essentially, if it's glowing, a bulb or a lamp, it's getting replaced if it's not already LED. So all the cans, the screw-ins, exit lights, exterior wall packs, every classroom, gymnasiums, storage closets, corridors, it's all getting replaced with LED fixtures. The solution that we're recommending, and I will say, I'm not sure if anyone has been there yet. I'm not sure, Greg, if they're aware yet, but at NIFR, we were placed on the first floor, one of the corridors down near the shop. I called it wood shop when I was in school. I don't know.
Engineering technology.
Thank you. Engineering technology, the corridor there. We had 3 different solutions up there. There's 6 lights, 2 of each were mocked up for anyone to take a look at and see the differences. What we settled on was the new fixtures, and there are a few reasons that I'll touch on. One of them is LED. Obviously, there's energy and dollars to be saved for that, and maintenance to be saved. The other one is aesthetics. So every classroom and every public space will be getting new LED fixtures, whether it's a lane ceiling with a 2x4, or the NIFR right down that same corridor. There's a couple classrooms have the pendant style, where it looks like they're hung with a cable or cord. They come down maybe 2 or 3 feet, and then there's the fixtures kind of below the ceiling level. We call those pendants. We're going to be replacing those with new LED pendants. So the aesthetics of that is going to be a tremendous improvement. So that's the high level view of the lighting. Again, I apologize. There's a lot we could go into. The dimming, these other thing. Thanks, Greg. We are adding advanced dimming controls to every classroom and 3 gymnasiums. So every classroom this is important because it really provides a tremendous control to the teachers. Each classroom has the ability to be controlled independently. The teacher can set up the lighting any way they want. Obviously, facilities will have to do that for them, but it's all done through remotes and some programming. But essentially, just say there's 20 fixtures in the ceiling, the teacher has 4 levels of controls. There's 4 buttons, and those 4 buttons can do whatever they want with those lights. So if she wants one light up to come on with button 1, it can be programmed. If they want them dimmed at 50%, the second button can dim everything to 50%. The 4th button can just turn on the ones in front of the projector. So it's really customizable to that teacher's needs, and whatever type of curriculum they're teaching, they can change it to suit their needs. And it also, the other thing, the district has the ability to set standards as well. You know, they can give teachers one of 4 options if they would like, to make it a little easier on facilities. But we envision this and we see this as pretty much start of school season in August, setting them up, possibly again at Christmas break, setting it up for the spring semester. It can be done on the fly. You know, you could do it on October 3rd. You could go in there and reprogram it. Can get labor intensive if they're running around to every classroom, but the thought would be the teacher would set it up in the start of the school season, maybe revisit it again if they got a different curriculum starting in January. But it's really, it's not that labor intensive. But the feedback we get in is it's really nice for the teacher to be able to control the lighting as they see fit in the classroom.
Gary, I don't want to cut you off, but
Sure.
But we only have 30 minutes for this.
I know. So I'm not sure how. I guess we can just. I'll go as quickly as I can without talking too fast. The other solution we're doing is we're fixing some much needed repairs for the coolers and freezers at the middle schools and the high school. So we've got some failing aging equipment that we are looking to replace with much needed new. I already mentioned the boilers. So we've got 1, 2, 3. We've got 5 schools all getting new boilers, new piping, new overhaul of the heating system for each one of those 5 schools. So I won't get into that. What's next, Greg?
That's the mechanical assessment.
Yeah,
so,
which we talked about. We already talked about that.
Right. So we're talking about a total renovation of the boiler systems or the boiler and mechanical rooms at these schools. New pipes, new boilers, new pumps, to make sure that everything is running as efficiently as possible and not kind of Frankenstein together. It's much more efficient. It's longer lasting. It'll last for decades on. Kind of the final few slides here. Here's where we are in the process. We're getting to the end. We're now in the implementation leg of this project, followed by the measurement and verification phase. This is where we prove our guarantee, right? So this is what we have to do by statute, is come back and show the calculations as well as the data behind the guarantee that we've made. And then finally, the last couple of slides. Partnership has never just been about infrastructure. A major part of our focus, and Carrie's and my focus as team members here, is really bringing STEM and sustainability to our community and continuing that partnership, where we as a company and also we as just, Carrie and I are investing in the district, the students, and really, it comes down to the whole community of Kirkwood. There's a lot of additional stuff in here. We've talked about that, kind of ad nauseum, is that, there's a lot of additional detail of what we're about and, what we're bringing to the district as a team. So as you read through these and you see them, as you have questions, definitely feel free to reach out. Some more stuff on the investment within the district. This is stuff that we do as a company, as a partner, is really providing our resources, our time, our energy to kind of assist in the enhancement of learning and educational opportunities for the district. And then finally, as we sit here, the final things to point out, the coming steps to getting this project complete in time for the heating season. And then as you continue to move down in here, there's a utility cost analysis, as well as a frequently asked questions for the ESCO project. So if somebody comes up to you and says, hey, Mr. Frost, what's the difference between this project that we're looking at right now and Prop S? Why would we get these two things confused? Or, how is this project being funded? This really gives you a very distinct way of answering those questions, as well as a draft of an infographic, which we have the ability to put out on the district website to really talk about what the positives are of this. We're really looking at making a lot of environmental enhancements to buildings, we're making a lot of infrastructure investment within the buildings. How are we as a district combining maintenance work and student involvement? Right? How can we bring energy and student involvement together and student engagement together to make this a learning opportunity for our students and not just, you know, a construction project? I guess finally, you know, as we've mentioned before, there's a ton of detail here. We have a lot more of it. We're excited to move into the next phase and finalize what, you know, Carrie and I, we've talked about this a lot. This is a really exciting time for us as professionals as well as parents within this district. We think that this is a very impactful project for the district, and we really hope that this quick look into the assessment provided insight for you guys and how we would move forward as far as addressing these issues. And we hope that given the grading scale of the school district that we'd rate as a 4 on this. My kids are oldest in middle school, so I don't have letter grades yet. But we like to think that we would rate as a 4 on this one.
And I forgot to mention earlier, the implementation schedule, everything, all the scopes we talked about, with the exception of the rooftops, were planned to start this summer. And the boilers will creep a little bit into the school season, but that work should be isolated to the boiler rooms, really back of the house. So it shouldn't interrupt any of the teaching, the curriculum being done. The rooftop units, because we're lifting equipment on top of roofs, and we're as late as we are into the schedule, that's not going to happen until summer of 2021. So I just wanted to make note of that.
And that is all we have. And we're here for questions.
I just have a couple of questions, and Carrie, you just touched on it a little bit. One, I just want to make sure that I understand. It's the environmental piece of it. That's great. I appreciate that. Hold on, I'll turn on my video. Ben promised to keep Gracie out of my hair. But what I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, this is kind of an overall maintenance plan for the school district, which we haven't really had in the past. So instead of like putting out fires and piecemealing things together, we have, and again, I could be wrong, an overall plan for the district on done, what's the most important thing to be done first, and that kind of thing. And then you also mentioned that we're getting implementation phase. So what's the timeline going forward on all of this? Like where are we with implementation? What are we doing next, and when are we doing it?
Yeah, that's a good question. So there's challenges in the district financially. I think we've identified probably over 50, 60 rooftop units just alone that are approaching their 5-year, 0 to 5 year. Significant amount of capital needs to be done out of the budget. Mike can speak that each year, and with all the rest of the repairs, it makes it very difficult to get that list taken care of and take care of all those, the normal day-to-day, but flooring, painting, all the other improvements that have to take place. So in this model, it allows you to leverage the 15 years to bring get a lot of work done now that you would have to spread out over, multiple years. So, we're getting rid of 18, we're removing those off of the list next summer. That would probably take 5 years alone, at least, with the standard procurement model. It's just taking care of each summer. So it's a start. It's the first step into getting that. There's $5 million roughly of what should get done. In the next. So this is the first step to get done, and we're pretty confident once the district sees the results of this procurement method, they'll like it and they'll summer to get more done. There's nothing says more units can't be added next summer. This is our first phase, but
So what are we doing this summer?
This summer is, Greg, if you can put that list back up, it's everything but the rooftops.
Oh,
So
can I jump in?
there's,
So
Right.
go ahead.
the next step for us and for myself and for maintenance is, and Greg, you had sent me the FIMS, which is the facility improvement measures broken
Yes.
out by cost and savings. So there's a lot of things identified. So what we need to do is, and I'll send it to the board as soon as I have it, but it's the cost of each one of these items that are identified here and the savings. So we have to look at those and determine which ones we want to implement. And then we're still negotiating fees with Siemens. So those things have to happen over the next couple of weeks. But what we want to do is to have a plan and bring something to the board in May so that we can start the work as soon as possible.
Right. I would think with summer breathing down our necks, we need to be getting this done sooner than later. So this isn't the plan. This is just a proposal of a plan. So you are deciding what we're going to do out of this then? Is that what you just said?
No, what I said was we're going to look at these items and determine what we think we should recommend to the board. These items that are listed here based on the energy savings and the cost. So that's the first step and as soon as I have that information, I'll send it to the board so that you can review it as well.
Okay.
And we've been talking with Greg and Carrie about the fees. We're trying to negotiate the fees so that they're lower. That's ongoing. But as soon as we come to an agreement on fees and on these improvements that we want to recommend to the board, then once that happens, then we'll bring a recommendation in May.
Interesting.
So just again, and I'm going to recap what I heard just because I want to make sure I understand. So this is an entire list of everything that Siemens would recommend. And we're going to prioritize that list based on money, savings, and I'm assuming also in the operations and maintenance plan that we've already identified, because it seems like there's some overlap.
That's
Is that correct?
And we have a 5-year maintenance plan. And we actually carried it out 10 years. And so we've identified a lot of this work already. It's the challenge is funding it. And so this is a method of funding it, as Carrie said, more quickly, to be able to do a lot of it up front, to use the energy savings to help pay for the capital cost. And so that's what we're working on.
Right, so this on the screen right now, that is the full list of recommended facility improvement measures. What we're recommending in the first phase is this list here. So this is when working with the district, when working with facilities team, and based on our data, this is our recommended list of facility improvement measures that are the most impactful that we feel for the district.
And then Greg, how does this prioritized list compare to what was in our operations and maintenance plan that we approved in the last year? What is the overlap, just so we can kind of get a gauge on what's new?
So I would say that everything here is well, with the exception of perhaps the walk-in cooler, freezer enhancements, and the cleaning and coating. Everything is reflected. It's just at different times, and then also you have a full block of everything versus maybe taking it and doing it in sections. So instead of doing, let's say, North Glendale's cafeteria lights in summer of 2021, we're doing everything now, right? And 2022, maybe there's a replacement of a different school's lights or a different school's mechanical system. So we're looking at it more of a larger block of work together to make a more impactful project that's, it hits more buildings, it hits more students, it hits more community members.
And then along with that is we tried to, for example, on the rooftops, and I think that the facilities does this as much as they can. Obviously, there's budgetary, but when you have a rooftop being replaced and you have the mobilization and the crane set up, the crane work is very labor intensive and very costly. One, for example, Knifer and North Kirkwood are going to be very challenging. It's a very big pick. We've had some contractors talk about helicopters and all this. So obviously there's costs, right? There's a cool factor of watching a helicopter fly over a school, but so we try to, that's why when we recommended this, we didn't do one here, one there, one at this school. We did all of Westchester. We did all of this school and all of the high school that needed replaced. Because they're set up, they can remove, we call picking, they can take one on and put one off with the crane set up. Maybe there's a couple different crane movements around the campus, around the building, but we're not running around at having those extra costs. So that's one thing we were able to do. I mean, that factored into along with budgetary constraints, that factored into this selection of this list here.
Oh, good to know. So it's not just an environmental savings. There's an implementation, construction, phasing savings that's going into it by doing it all together versus spread out, having people on site and doing multiple things.
Yeah, I already said that. Yeah, you already said that.
Yeah.
Oh.
I was just recapping, so I understood. Thank you.
Oh, I have a question, if I can.
Hey, Angie.
Hi, it's Angie. Mr. O'May, thank you for, you presented quite a few different companies, and then the board approved Siemens to do our energy savings plan. And without getting into too much detail, I know that there's a strategic vision of this energy savings with the LED lighting, with the sealing things up, with the HVAC units. And I think that we can all appreciate that our schools are older and they need to be cared for, and that's why we have that maintenance fund. So it sounds like it's more of a partnership here about what to do as phased in. But you have an overall plan of savings, and this $5 million savings, to me, it looks like something like the E-rate savings we get when we do something with our computers. And Siemens has done a good job and been a good partner with other schools as well. So right now, are we just talking about the general approval of moving forward with the entire plan, or you're getting into the little details of which projects to do? I guess that's for Mr. Romay.
Right, we still have some more work on our end to do before we bring a recommendation to you in May. So we're not quite there. I'm not asking you to approve anything tonight. This is a presentation of kind of the recommendation from Siemens, and then the cost. And I think you have some of the breakdown of the cost, but what you don't have is each one of these items listed here, these FIMs, that show the cost of each one of those and how much the energy savings each one of those will generate. And so that will be really helpful information as we decide if we're going to do all of these or some of them. And then, like I said, we are still talking with Greg and Carrie about the fees.
Well, looks like they have a good overall plan, so hopefully we can work together with our maintenance department. It sounds like it will be a joint project with the maintenance department and Siemens to figure out the best ones to do in what order.
Yeah. And Tricia is on the line, and Brian Murphy, they do great work, and so they've been on all the calls. Russ couldn't be here tonight, but he's been on all the calls and all the meetings with Greg and Carrie.
Yeah, and I'll echo that. I mean, Tricia and Brian have been fantastic through this process. We gain a ton of knowledge from them about their systems or about the systems within the building. I mean, we could go and look at nameplate information. We can look at condition, and that's only one component of our assessment. Having the people who are actually involved in these systems on a day-to-day basis involved in this has been, I mean, it's been extraordinarily valuable for our assessment and our recommendations moving forward.
I have a quick question. So the contract that the work that we've done with Siemens thus far was strictly an energy audit. Am I misunderstanding or missing something?
We call it an infrastructure condition assessment. It's a very holistic look at every building system within the district. It's not just focused on energy. It's not solely focused on safety and security. It's really looking at every building and every component within each building when it comes to facilities and operations.
Okay, so I guess my question is this then, you know, so we've entered, or so it's an audit of all of that stuff. So the scope of work then and information, is that something that we're already in contract on? I mean, it seems like, or is that, I mean, because I guess I just am curious from the aspect, yeah, you know, that there have been great partners and that kind of thing, but we also have to get bids, correct?
We've procured multiple bids for every facility improvement measure that we've listed, that we've developed. That's part of our process is once we move into the implementation phase, actually before we move into the implementation phase, once we engineer, design, and develop these projects, we are approaching multiple vendors, minimum of 3 on every measure to gain that best value and best costs for the district. And then what we do is we provide a guaranteed cost, so that gives you budget certainty. It's guaranteed to be 9,670,682 without any change orders, without any additional contingency funds, without any additional us coming back to you with our hands out saying, hey, please, you know, we have additional scope of work that needs to be done because we missed something on estimation that we need to have a change order for. So what this procurement aspect, or what this procurement model is that we're providing this entire project for you at $9.6 million. It's guaranteed to not have a change order unless you come back and say, hey, Greg, you know, we really like this, but we want to increase the quality, or we want to have a different brand of lighting or whatever. If it's district driven, then there may be a change order, maybe not, depending on where the project sits, but it's guaranteed to not be any more than that from us.
And will we get the opportunity to see those bids?
Yeah, we provide the material numbers for you guys. We provide bid breakouts on these things, but yes, I mean, we are, I would say, more transparent than any vendor you have ever worked with, without a doubt.
Okay, so we'll have the amount and then also the vendor name for the different bids that you've gotten.
If that's what you want. Yes.
And
Angie, you're muted. Hi.
can you hear me now?
Yes, ma'am.
There's something wrong with my computer. Real quick, it sounds like Siemens assumes some of the risk, and there's a school board policy, it's FED, it's construction manager at risk. So I'm just throwing that out there, Mr. Romay. That's something, it seems like they'll be helping us with all the things that Jean Marie was mentioning. So the bids and the risk and the guarantee of savings and all that. Is that correct?
Yes, realistically, we assume all the risk in this project, not only of the implementation and cost, but also of future performance. If we guarantee a certain amount of energy or operational savings, we have to come back and show you those. So
Angie, just to be clear, that we didn't choose them as, you know,
Right.
Yeah, they're not
I
operating.
understand. I understand that.
Right.
Mhm.
So I don't
Absolutely.
think that you can all of a sudden say, you know, it'll clear up what Jean Marie's asking if they're not our construction manager. And so it doesn't fall under that policy, correct?
No, I just meant it, minimize risk, to minimize risk. You're correct. But it does minimize risk because there's a guarantee. That's all.
correct.
Well, I've heard a lot of good questions.
Darnell, can I ask one more?
Yeah, go ahead, Jennifer.
Yeah, sorry. No, this is more specific about the LED fixtures. You made comment about all the different locations that we would be changing them out. What percent of our district has already changed over to LED?
Oh, you'd ask me that, wouldn't you? I will get that. I don't have it in memory. I'm sorry. I have a million numbers in my head, but I have that. So when we did our audit, we went room by room. It took us almost, I think, a week, 2 weeks. So we counted every fixture, anything that glowed, right? So we have an audit of that. And in that audit would have identified anything that's currently LED, which is staying in LED. So I can extract those numbers and send that through Mike to you.
Yeah, I would actually be interested. No, okay. And I guess here's where I was going, because I was trying to figure out, because we've had numerous conversations since I've been on the board about switching over to LED lights, which I think we all agree is the right way to go from a saving standpoint, and they last longer and environmentally friendly, all these things. And I was curious what percent of the district we've already turned over. And then are we saying in this first phase that we're switching everything else, every other light over to LED, or we are phasing the LEDs in by like a prioritized list? I guess that's where I'm going, is looking at how much money it would be really helpful to know if we have a prioritized list of here's what we would switch over right away, right? The classroom spaces, the ones that are used the most. Here's would be that second phase in 5 years or something. That's kind of
right. No, it's a good question. Right now, the recommendation is for a district-wide replacement this summer. So essentially, when school starts, the retrofit will be complete. So there's no phased approach. Doesn't mean it can't happen, but right now there's no phased approach. As soon as there's the go-ahead, we're going to deploy, ordering equipment, and the crews will be here at night, day, to be done before the start of the school season this fall.
You lose a fairly significant economy of scale if you start to put one building as a retrofit and then wait until the next summer for the retrofit. You end up losing more money in the economy of scale and the lack of the energy savings that you get from not implementing those all at the same time than you would by implementing them in a phased approach. Lighting is one of those that it makes sense to do more because you get more savings up front, and the cost savings on the equipment and the installation is significant enough to make it worth it, so to speak.
And the other thing, just real quick to add in, we've been doing this a while, and one of the things that we try to counsel districts on is lack of a better term, the political side of retrofits with teachers. If one classroom has real nice new fixtures, is dimmable, another teacher may not have that. And even though it wasn't part of it, favoritism, someone, why did they get it and I didn't get it, even though it was strategically just a count and beat, this school or that school, it removes that to where if everybody gets the lighting at the same time, then it really helps keep everyone in the same place. And even for maintenance, for bulb replacements, lamp replacements, they're kind of on the same schedule a little bit, or as close as they can be. Granted, they don't burn out on time, they burn out on hours on. So but that's the other thing, that it helps remove that as well.
Okay. Well, and I appreciate that, and I think that makes a lot of sense. I understand the economies of scale and purchasing more at the same time buying in bulk type conversation, I would still question if we could see a list of if there were priority areas. Just thinking, looking at all of these things and the cost, it just may be beneficial. So, but that all makes sense. That was all I had to know. Thank you.
So Mike, what are the next steps? Just for our purpose.
Myself and Russ and Trisha and Brian are going to continue our conversations with Greg and Carrie. And as soon as I have the breakdown of the costs and the savings for each one of these, we're going to review that. I'm going to send it to the board. And as soon as we come to an agreement, then we'll prepare a recommendation for the board in May.
Nice. Thank you very much, Mr. Romay. Great job on the presentation. No further questions for me. I want to be respectful of your time and our time. So thank you very much for showing us the updates. We look forward to seeing where this thing is.
Thank you very much. Real quick.
Yeah, yes, sir, Mark.
Just to understand, at the start of this process, was looking at adding solar panels or some sort of renewable capacity to the school part of the scope of your project, or is that separate from this project?
It's something that we continually look at. From an economic perspective, we did not feel that it made sense at this time. As numbers continued, as legislation in the state changes and makes something like an additional solar project or distributed energy project more economically viable, that's something that we'll bring to the district. But at this point, the way that the net metering legislation is within the state, with the economy of scale on solar, which is weirdly extremely important when it comes to solar equipment, with the economy of scale being as low on these projects, the economic value was just not there. It would be probably 29 to 30 years for those to realistically have any sort of a financial impact on district bottom line.
And Mark, we did put them on 5 of our buildings that use Ameren Electric because of the incentives. And this was several years ago, probably 6 or 7 years ago. The rest, half of our buildings are Ameren, half of them are City of Kirkwood Electric. And Kirkwood doesn't offer any incentives, so that's why we didn't do those other schools. But to Greg's point, they're expensive and the payback takes a long time.
Sure, I just trying to understand if it was looked at, and if it was, and we're close. Want to make sure that we're keeping an eye on that, and if it's not a close call, we know when to revisit it.
I would say if you look at this matrix at this table here, when we first start looking at projects like this table is about 5 times as long. And then as we start to move through the economic process of getting costs together, getting savings ideas together, a lot of these things start to kind of move their way from being a priority and being hey, maybe 5 years down the line, if we can see something different happening, then we could start to insert some of these back into the plan. But as it stands right now, the economic case for these is not very good.
All righty. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Greg. Thanks, Carrie.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for the presentation. See you guys. All righty. We will continue to move through our day here. And I wanted to apologize to Dr. Condon if you had anything you wanted to open us up with. The next thing on here is 2.02 updates on various school closures. Dr. Condon, who's going to lead us through that?
going to be pulling up a quick presentation for everyone. So our teachers, as you know, began the e-learning opportunities for our students on March 26th, which means we are completing our week of online instruction. We've learned a lot over the time through this process, and some of this you'll see in the thought exchange survey we administer to teachers and to our parents after our first full week of instruction. We've made some adjustments to what we're doing in response to the results of that survey. We'll see some of those results in a minute. But some of those changes include a more concerted effort to streamline our communication to parents, the initiation of our Go Slow campaign, the purchase of educational accounts from Zoom so that we could better ensure privacy for students, the development of an online tools status page on our webpage, and this to the initial challenges that Schoology was having in accommodating learning for around the country at this point. We also began to work with teachers on calibrating grading practices by level and identify essential skills, especially for elementary teachers, to help them focus instruction, essential skills for their grade level. So I'll go ahead and turn this over. I think Dr. Painter was first. Were you going to bring up the presentation on the results? There we go. And this is thought exchange and some of the information that we gleaned from that survey. Thank you.
And I'm unmuted, I think, so hopefully you can hear me. Thank you for the opportunity to share, and I'm going to let Dr. Bailey hop in on any parts of this because really our entire team has been working on this. Just as a reminder, our survey dates actually were for April 3rd through the 10th. So it started roughly 2 weeks ago, actually a little over 2 weeks ago. And I think we all know that 2 weeks seems like at least 2 months for us at this point. And so a lot honestly has changed since this survey. Point out that at the time of this survey and for most of our survey window, we were not yet sure if we would be going back to school or not. And so that may have played into some of our responses as well. This is just a simple word cloud. If you take all of the responses that were provided by our families, and it was a considerable amount. I want to say it was 1,800 or so, but Ginger may be able to correct me on that one. But you can see that what jumped out to me, at least first, was appreciate. There are a lot of words here that might have more negative connotation as well, like frustrating. And we actually need to pay attention to those as well. But it was very obvious as we dove into the results that our families very, very much appreciated all that our teachers were doing and all the district was doing. And quite frankly, the fact that the district was in a good situation, if you can be in a good situation to handle this, because we were already one-to-one with our iPads and we already had Schoology in place as our learning management system, our iPads and our laptops. Just briefly, a quick overview from the data suggests several key themes. Our families, as mentioned, they greatly appreciate all that our teachers are doing. They would like additional consistency and structures. Obviously, this is overwhelming for all of us. And many of our parents are, of course, not only supporting education at home, but they're also doing their own jobs at home and parenting and dealing with financial things. And so anything we can do to make life a little bit easier for our families is important. And then they value the regular opportunities. Our kids, that isolation was very apparent in the survey results, and they appreciate any opportunities that the kids had to connect with each other. I think Zoom showed up all over the place on our surveys, and they really loved the chance that the kids had to connect with their teachers, but also the opportunities offered for the students to connect with each other. And then they appreciated that Go Slow campaign and our consistent focus really from even before we started with the KST Learns Online, our focus on mental health, well-being, and setting realistic expectations for everyone. In addition, there were some secondary themes. Communication, they value Schoology, but they wanted communication to come through email as well. They did note that there are challenges, obviously, with schooling children while trying to work from home, and we all feel that, and we all need to constantly remind ourselves of that. And then they really value that offline experience. We recognize that our devices, our iPads and our laptops are the main way that we can even communicate and connect with each other. But they said comments that mentioned the value of having kids doing school work that wasn't necessarily on their device. And then we just wanted to throw this in there as well. This is really important for us to remember. While we spent a bulk of our time looking at the data that rated a 4.0 or higher, or 4 stars or higher, 5 stars meant I completely agree with this, and 1 star meant I completely disagree. But there were a number of responses between 3.5 and 3.9 that really highlighted the stress that our families are experiencing right now. And I think it's important for us to always remember that, because we do have a responsibility to educate our kids, but our parents are overwhelmed as well. And anything that we can do to minimize the expectations, or minimize their stress levels, I should say, while not shortchanging our students, is important for us to do. We're going to switch over now and talk about some of the staff responses, because our staff members also had an opportunity to take the survey. It was a slightly different survey prompt and a different survey. And I'm going to pass that off to Dr. Bailey, but I will keep changing slides for him.
Well, good evening, everyone. There were some key themes that came through on our staff responses as well. The data really suggested that they greatly appreciate the support they've received, and that support from administrators, facilitators, support staff, school board members, parents, that they're definitely appreciative of everything that's out there. But as typical of teachers, they are worried about several things. One, workload came through, just overall workload for staff members, also for students and families, that these are challenging times for everybody. They did have genuine concerns about student social emotional health, and then just continue to worry about reaching all learners, particularly those who struggle, that typically some of the ways that we would provide intervention are in-person opportunities, or being able to see that a student visually is struggling in a classroom, and you don't always have that opportunity when you are doing things online. So there are a couple graphics that we also look at as well. So we put together 2 different word clouds. You can look at them based on either the ratings. So you can see that the bigger words here were rated at a higher level, as Dr. Painter explained the star system. So you can see Friday, week, overwhelmed were some of those big words that were there that were highly rated. Obviously, again, everybody was feeling that. That's fine. But on the next slide, when we looked at the actual number of thoughts that words were mentioned in, you can see that while work is large there, we can see that families, kids, parents, support are all things, again, that were mentioned multiple times by our teachers. So interestingly, the word Friday is up in the top left, one of the smaller ones in terms of number of thoughts that it was mentioned, compared to the number of ratings that it had. So highly rated, but not as mentioned as many times from our staff members. But the genuine concern and care that they have for their kids and the parents and the families, again, really came through with this particular word cloud. So we also have a couple of different ways we can look at some of the responses in graphical form. So you can see I did not choose the orange, so I apologize for that. That was an automatic choice, so don't think less of me there. But the darker brownish color would be where thoughts are higher rated. And I kind of assign different categories to these. So on the far right, you can see some general categories of a 4-day work week, social emotional well-being of our students, support, positive support from the district, staff workload, student workload, communication, struggling learners, grading, and then just technology. You can see there are some differences between our elementary, middle school, and high school, and some consistencies. When it came to workload, when it came to social emotional supports, there were some consistencies there. And just some differences, but overall, the darker color would mean that more stars were assigned to that particular thought. The next slide would show, again, looking at that number of thoughts, and you can see there was one consistent there in terms of staff workload, that at every level had a high number of thoughts assigned to that particular area. And then the support. So what was very interesting to me as I went through this was that while staff workload was kind of the most mentioned topic, support, positive support, that they were proud of Kirkwood, they were proud of the district, proud of the devices, thankful for the administration and the facilitators. So while we know that this is difficult, we also know that we have great supports in place. And then student workload was there. So, and then you can see that we separated out by thoughts. So on the far left, again, these are the number of thoughts that we have in terms of staff workload, student workload. And really workload came down to not just looking at days of the week, but the amount of time people are putting in to different things, the worry that students were spending a large amount of time online, some of the same things that our families were expressing. Difficult, that this, while there are great opportunities for asynchronous learning for students to kind of be able to set up a schedule for them, probably what parents are realizing and teachers are realizing is that when you aren't physically connected in that classroom to that teacher and have that immediate access to that help or that support or that network of support systems you have in place, that struggle becomes a little bit more apparent for some students, or questions you may have had just become a little bit more difficult. So staff workload as well. It's a new normal for everybody. I think there's one more. So kind of some of the thoughts, well, some of the thoughts that teachers had posted, and again, and this was before we knew that we had closure through the end of the school year. But these were kind of two that captured just where some teachers are at, that there is a lot of parent contact, which is great, a lot of staff contact, which is great, and then the Zooms. It's needed, but overwhelming. So again, it is very needed, but we know that it can be time consuming. And then just distance learning is time consuming. It's basically taking what we did in the classroom and trying to convert that in some cases to digital. Just take some time to do it right. And our teachers hold themselves to a very, very high standard, as they should. That's what our students and our parents deserve. And so I think some of the comments just show that teachers are hard on themselves for not being perfect at this and not being, as dynamic at this as they are in the classroom. And that's very respectable and honorable of those teachers as well. So I think some of the things may come through that, oh my goodness, this is very difficult. I think what it really is I hold myself to such a high standard and I don't feel like I'm adequately meeting that yet. So I'm going to rate myself a little bit lower in that respect. But again, our teachers are doing well. The staff were also very thankful that we focused on the less is more concept, really saying it, less is more. This was one of the highest rated thoughts. There was only one thought rated higher than this, and that was that our teachers are awesome. But our teachers were very thankful that we focused on less is more. So when I talk about our teachers holding themselves to a very high standard, these kinds of thoughts give them permission to know that they don't have to be perfect. And I think that's why we see those high ratings on there as well. They appreciate the message of less is more, taking some pressure off. The administration, again, has been very, very supportive at the building level, especially, and our tech staff has been supportive for everybody also. And then just some possible action steps we talked about based on staff feedback, and some of these we've already done, but you can see that the highest rated thought by all staff was that our teachers are amazing. And that is the biggest truth that we can have come out of there, that our amazing, amazing teachers. We've seen some tremendous stories of how teachers are reaching their students, doing Zooms. I've heard of one teacher who's writing math problems on driveways in chalk for students to solve that next morning and send pictures in, and just reading over the internet and reading different things, just finding new ways to connect. We think that one way we can really do that, some steps that we've already taken, focus on identifying those essential skills at the elementary school. We have done that. Continuing those class and core structures at the high school. We've done that. Looking again at ways we can streamline communication and help with organization. Parents are not necessarily trained teachers, and so setting up those routines and procedures are different when you're at home than when you're at school. Continue to use Zoom and phone calls to strengthen those connections. Like Dr. Painter said, Zoom came through in a lot of places. And so we're very grateful that we have those education licenses. Explore additional options to promote those community connections and well-being at that district level, just having people connect. We have a May 1st half day, so we're in process of talking about what does a half day look like for online learning, and discussing that at the district level. And then just again, giving some teachers permission, especially as those last days come up, to have some fun and really celebrate the amazing, amazing things that our teachers and our students and our families did. Continue to encourage the less is more. We've already done shared messaging about grading and report cards, and I know Dr. Painter's team is continually putting together professional development for teachers that are seeking some things out. So we have taken measurable, actionable steps already from feedback from both families and teachers.
Thank you, Dr. Bailey. I am actually going to try to share my screen here. Not that one, but this one. Can everyone see my screen?
Yeah. Hit the share button.
And where would that be, Brian? Oh, I see. Code or send a copy?
No, if you hit share screen you want to share, and then hit the blue share button in the lower right-hand corner.
Okay, I'm on the screen.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
Dr. Bailey, you can do your thing as you. Dr. Bailey, do we have any data on how many students maybe are not engaging in learning per se, like have gotten online or, you know, aren't necessarily doing the work? And I ask this from the place of, I just think that it's important that we're keeping track of that for the future, and making sure that, you know, teachers are not to punish anyone or do anything like that, but just to give us kind of a little perspective of their learning. You know, if students are behind, it could be that, you know, this is 5 months. So if they're not engaging in learning, that's 5 months of not engaging in learning.
Yeah, so at each of our classroom teachers, and so we don't have that tonight, but that's something that Dr. Painter and I are definitely going to be collecting, because we need to know. And then we will work with our principals and our teachers to try to differentiate between the can't connect versus the don't want to connect versus the I connected for a while and then I stopped connecting. I know our principals are continually reaching out to those students who maybe have gone a day or two without connecting in some way via either email or checking in on the Zoom. So we've got a lot of those supports in place to try to connect to those students. But yes, in terms of getting actual numbers for that and what that could look like, we'll talk to the buildings in our principal meetings about working with us on that. But you're correct. This is going to be, if we go back to essentially the day before spring break, if the earliest we can go back is August 24th, we are talking about a long amount of time, and that some students who have not experienced difficulties before or academic struggles or even trauma before, that they may have some struggles coming into that haven't always been on our radar. So we are, Dr. Painter, I know, is as well talking to our principals, our interventionists, our SEL teams about, you know, kind of what that could look like. There are just a lot of unknowns with that, but you are correct that we are going to have to really be very cognizant of that when we get back to in person.
The other one thing that you know, as a former teacher, you know, in kindergarten, when kids would come to kindergarten, oftentimes you'd have kids that just didn't even know how to necessarily learn. They didn't, you know, we would always talk about like school ready learning and behavior and that kind of thing. And I've just been thinking a lot about, like, you know, this is a change for all kids. And so if a student doesn't have a parent that's kind of walking them through, like, for example, with my own kids, I was like, I quickly learned, okay, I need to make a checklist of help them make a checklist of their assignments. It just different organizational things. And I'm just wondering if we have done anything to kind of like train kids on how to be online learners, or if that's something that you guys might see as needed. And we can talk about that later. It looks like Michelle's ready to rock and roll.
I'll just say that I think a lot of our teachers spent the first couple of weeks focusing on those sorts of things.
Thank you, Dr. Painter. I would agree. I think that what we've been trying to do up to this point is help our kids understand how to use and our teachers how to use technology effectively. And this being thrown into this situation as quickly as we were, I think we will continue to have lessons learned on what we can improve upon. So thank you. Good point. I just also wanted to point out that we've been continuing to provide meal assistance for our families, for our students in particular. We began serving grab-and-go meals on Tuesday, March 25th, the date 24th. And then we provide breakfast and lunch for the student each day. Breakfast for the next day and lunch for that day, because meals are picked up at NIFR between 11 o'clock and 1 o'clock each day. Parents can drive by and there's someone there to provide the meals, so parents don't even have to get out of the car. Currently, we have 220 students living within the district boundaries that have signed up for meals, and we are actually delivering to 29 families. First student and 2 volunteers. First student in the city is providing first student and volunteers in our district are providing meals for our families. And then we also provide meals for our VIC students. And VIC is using one of their bus drivers to deliver meals to students who live within the city of St. Louis. So on an average basis, we're serving about 230 breakfasts and lunches each day. The Riverview and Normandy students are able to access meals within their school districts. And we continue to provide food for the weekends for 100 families through KSD Now. If there are families that are in need of food assistance, we encourage everyone to call the school district's hotline that is listed on this page, or to visit kirkwoodschools.org/cares. And we've also received quite a few donations from community members and families who want to donate to that cause. We may have an opportunity to continue this service through the summer because of the donations that have been provided on this site. So we're really pleased that we've been able to continue with that service for our students. Kirkwood graduating class of 2020. We know that our students are on hold with their graduation, but Dr. Havener has been communicating regularly with the parents and students in that class. We have tentatively reserved June 20th and July 11th at Chaffetz, if we are able to, at that point, hold a graduation ceremony. So those dates are reserved for Kirkwood. And then just this past week, we initiated Friday Night Lights, where the lights in the football stadium are lighted at 8:20 and are lit for 20 minutes, and that's in honor of the class of 2020. And we will continue that through the last day of school, which is May 21st. And then just a reminder to everyone that the election date has been moved to June 2nd, 2020, and that will be for 3 members of our Board of Education and for Prop S. Are there any questions about our updates about online learning or what's been going on in the district?
Just thank you for your continued work with this. I know it's a lot, but you guys have done a fabulous job and continue to do a fabulous job, and it's really appreciated.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'd love to echo that and say, first, let me just start by saying, I think we'd be remiss if we didn't thank our community. Dr. Painter mentioned our one-to-one, and being able to have, technology and access to that for our children, it's been huge. It's been amazing to be able to make that available to our students. So thank you to our community for that. And to our staff, I am so impressed and amazed at what the teachers are doing, what the staff is doing. Michelle, what are you and your staff are doing at the ASC? Well, home now, but you know what I mean. But it warms my heart to see all the work that goes in our building administrators. So last week I was on a call for one of my students at the high school, and there was the grade level principal was actually on the call. And for me, that shows the heart of our administrators and the teachers, the staff members, that they're making themselves available to their students. It's just amazing to see, because this is a change and it's hard. It's different. It's nothing like we're used to dealing with. We're all trying to kind of wade our way through this thing and figure out what's the best next step. And I just thank everyone for their hard work, their dedication, their efforts in helping our students get what they need to make all this happen. So thank you guys so much.
I think what impresses me the most is the way so many of our staff members are reaching out to parents and reaching out to students, and not waiting to be called upon. And I think that taking that initiative really shows everyone how much they care.
That's right. And also, I'd like to echo, you mentioned Dr. Havener. He's been doing an amazing job of keeping us informed, touching base with the senior parents. I have a senior this year, and I know firsthand what our seniors are going through, and it's tough. It's been, I can't even explain the emotions that have been tied to what they're dealing with this year. And I feel for every senior this year, because it's hard to not have, all of those experiences that seniors should be having right now. It's really tough. So I just want to thank Dr. Havener and his staff for everything he's doing.
Agreed.
All righty. Well, next up, our 2.03, review and discussion of our policy revisions.
Well, I apologize that we have so many policy revisions from MSBA. When those come in, we never know how many we're going to get, but we thought we'd take the opportunity right now to go over these more quickly. It will allow the board to take a couple weeks prior to the next board meeting, really do some more in-depth studying of these policies and send us any questions that you might have about the changes. The explanation that is on the screen right now was provided by MSBA, and to just share with you how quickly we're going to go over them. The first policy, BA, is not one that we currently have in Kirkwood. It is being rescinded by MSBA, and so we really don't even need to review. Policy BBE on school board vacancies really just provides an update on how vacancies that are not in an election period should be handled. And then policy BHA on board training and development is adding an additional 2.5 hours to board training for new board members. And that training is related to recognizing the signs of sexual abuse in children and knowing where to go and what to do from there. That training will be added to the 1-hour refresher training that all board members have moving forward. So that brings us really to our D policies, and that's Mike Romay. Mike, did you want to start to address those policies?
Sure. DEA talks, in this explanation, it talks about revenues, but that's actually not part of the policy. They're just making us aware of that. It really, the policy in itself only emphasizes that the board and the superintendent should the importance of the board and the superintendent to regularly communicate with legislators and policymakers about district funding issues. DJF purchasing, I'm going to take two of these together, DJF and FEF. And I'm going to start with FEF first. So FEF is construction contracts and bidding and awards. And this policy was changed as a result of House Bill 604 that requires us to advertise and bid construction projects that exceed $50,000. And previously the threshold was $15,000. So this was revised based on state law. DJF, which is all other purchasing of the district, was revised to mirror this policy change. So those two were changed to be pretty similar. FED, construction manager at risk. There's really only one minor change in that, and it requires that we get a performance bond when the cost of a contract exceeds $50,000. And currently, we're not using construction manager at risk. That's just a method that school districts can use when they're constructing, working on projects. The next one, DJFA, there was just some minor changes in terminology and language and terminology. And then finally, FEF, construction bidding and contracts. The main change in here was prevailing wage. We're no longer required to require contractors to pay prevailing wage if a project is under $75,000.
Any questions about the D policies? All right, thank you, Mike.
I had one.
Sure.
Mike, do you know what made MSBA or the state change DJF to 50,000 before it was 15,000 and we had to put out an RFP? Why that threshold, this new threshold?
I don't know why they changed that, but our policy is more restrictive than what the actual policy is. So if you look at the policy, which we don't have up here, there's language in there that requires our schools and departments to get 3 quotes for anything, any item that costs more than $1,000 or any purchase order that is more than $2,000. So that's language that we added years ago to the policy. So that's still in there. But they changed that sealed bids. That's a more lengthy process that requires us advertising, doing an RFP and getting sealed bids. But we are still getting written quotes for anything, again, anything over 1,000, any item over 1,000, or any purchase over 2,000.
Okay, thanks for that clarification. That's good.
So we have a series of G policies, which is related to human resources. Cindy, did you want to speak to those?
Sure. Several of these policies are coming from House Bill 604 also. 2 major changes are coming out of that. One being that districts are required to check with previous employers to ensure that the person that you're offering a position to wasn't involved in an allegation of sexual misconduct from a sending district. That's one. The second is a change in criminal background checks on what we currently have screened volunteers. We do a name search for the Family Care Safety Registry. They are changing that to require a fingerprint background check for volunteers who may be alone with students. So those are 2 major pieces of legislation that's influencing a lot of these changes. So the first one, GBLB references, that is requiring us to get those clearance letters essentially from other districts. And as a part of a regional human resources group, we've already created that form that will be sent among districts. So it's a common form that all of us are using. So we've already had that in place, and we've actually used that for all of the teachers that we've hired so far this year. So we're ahead of the curve on that one.
Question on that, Cindy.
Yep.
Currently, you weren't required to report if someone was had sexual misconduct.
No, that's not. We would always report it to the children's division. It's if somebody leaves us, if they quit their job and they want to go to another district. It had been happening years ago where maybe teachers weren't disclosing everywhere that they had worked in order to avoid that information being shared. So we saw some tightening up of the legislation, and really it was dependent upon the district to reach out to do a little research and find the previous employers. And now the legislation has tightened up that now we are to contact DESE and verify previous employers before we offer a position to someone and check with those folks.
That's great.
Yeah. Criminal background checks for volunteers. This may have a cost implication in the future. We currently have volunteers do the Family Care Safety Registry, which is about $14, and the volunteer pays for that check itself. We really do that for any volunteers in the school who may be alone with kids. That could be anybody volunteering for small reading groups. The bigger party days, we don't really require everybody to do that because it's just too many folks. But going forward, we'll need to decide if we want to pass that cost along to the volunteer, because the fingerprint background check is $52. So it's quite an increase. And we've only required people to do that check once. And then we keep them in good standing with the district throughout the length of their child's tenure with us. So we have that on the content calendar for August to roll that out as a change.
I have a quick question on that. When you say a volunteer is alone with a child, if you're doing small reading groups, they're not alone. There are multiple children. So does that count as alone, or does alone count?
Not another adult.
Perfect.
Not another adult, right? And any of our GAP families actually would have to go through this process as well, because they would be bringing a child into their home.
So, this cost could be really a lot when you think about, parents in elementary and even middle school for field trips.
Mm-hmm.
They send parents alone with a group out to explore the zoo.
Correct. That's typically where we get the most volunteers, is for field trips. And that's just a decision that we haven't made yet. Currently, like I said, the volunteer is paying for that fee, but we could, if we decided as a district to take that on, because it is such a significant increase. But we have time to decide that before the school year starts. GCD, recruiting and hiring. Again, it discusses that criminal background or that sexual allegation check with other districts. The same with GDC, that's for support staff. Oh, I'm sorry, that's for transfers. We actually do not have policies GCI and GDI. It really is giving more detail about the staff assignment and transfer process. These suggested policies match our current practice, so I don't see a reason not to adopt them. I think it's good to have the language in policy restated. The next chunk, they're all very similar. Resignation, suspension, termination of certified staff and also of support staff. It talks about a disclosure that if somebody is terminated or leaves the district under allegations of sexual misconduct, that we create essentially a form and note that in their file, just in case anybody who comes along later will have a record of those allegations.
Great. Thank you, Cindy. I appreciate that. And now we're coming up to the I policies. I think Dr. Painter was going to speak to these.
Yep. Policy IC has to do with the academic calendar. We are all too familiar with the new requirement that school cannot begin until 14 days prior to the first Monday of September. This policy includes that language to align with House Bill 604. It also provides opportunities for districts to seek approval for an alternative methods of instruction plan, which Dr. Bailey and I worked on in early March of this year. The note on that is that you can do that for up to 36 hours of instruction, and it's mostly for to avoid making up days due to weather or other unforeseen circumstances, not situations like this pandemic. School volunteers has already been taken care of. Sexual health instruction, IGAEB. This policy, the title was changed to more accurately reflect the policy's purpose. In addition, MSBA added the new requirement for school districts to provide instruction to students on identifying, reporting, and dealing with sexual abuse. And it also recommends instruction on teaching about consent, sexual harassment, and sexual violence. Those are in all grades, no lower than 6th grade. And then graduation requirements, I think Dr. Bailey's going to talk about that because he spends a lot of time dealing with this with the high school.
Jean Marie, did you have a question before I started?
I do have a question on this sexual. So it only starts in 6th grade that you talk to students about sexual abuse?
Correct. And that is, and at that point they can, it also, this policy also, and this has been in place, requires us to notify parents when it's going to happen and what the content will be. And then there's an opt-out opportunity for parents as well.
So, you know, we do sexual, you know, like in 4th and 5th grade, but that has nothing to do with abuse. It just has to do with puberty.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And actually in 4th and 5th grade, it's actually more on human development than it is on sex education.
Okay, perfect. And parents are notified.
They're notified, and actually that's one thing that we've been working on is up until recently, every school has kind of done their own process for that, and even had their own notification letters. And so we have spent some time, Liz Grana and Michelle Neese have really spent some time with the health and PE teachers this year to coordinate that across the district and make sure that we have a unified letter, unified message, that sort of thing. And we plan to have information on our website well, we have some now, but all of it for all levels on our website by August for next year.
And maybe included in that, just if parents do choose to opt out, what that kind of looks like.
Yeah, there'll actually be a
for their
letter.
kid. Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, there'll actually be a letter on our website that allows them to submit that, because the policy actually says that they submit it in writing.
Right, but I guess I think that parents often worry that if they have their child opt out, what does that look like for their child during that time?
Absolutely, yeah. So there's an alternative assignment or an alternative placement for them during that time. Absolutely.
Perfect. Thank you, guys.
Mm-hmm.
And then IKF is just about graduation requirements. So within a graduation handbook a few years ago, this was a local allowable where students that are taking a computer science course could have that substitute for a math or science or practical art graduation requirement. So in Kirkwood, we require 3 math credits. This could take the place of 1 of those math credits if a student took computer science. So just to clarify too, we have 2 courses that would meet that requirement: AP Computer Science and then Smash Code. Just our normal computer apps class where you're learning about just, you know, word processing or spreadsheets wouldn't qualify. This one has to be actual computer science courses. And then if a student does take that course at South County Tech, that would count as well for us to be able to do that. The exception to this is that we have to inform students that some higher institutions may not accept that substitution at the college level and may still say that you did not necessarily have enough math credits for their admission piece. So that placed that into policy there as well. And then under school admissions, this is something that we've actually had in place now when we shifted to our online enrollment opportunities, but JEC was shifted to allow military families to enroll remotely when moving to Missouri. And then just a couple questions or comments that were in there: changes that we do not have to require social security numbers, but for their reasons why we could ask for social security numbers. So just so you know, in Kirkwood, we do have that online enrollment opportunity and the digital document upload that we can do for all families, not just for those military families. So that's an option that we've already got in place. The JFCL A+ Schools program, one change that was made that I am actually a big fan of is that the A+ money now can be used for students while still in high school if they're taking dual credit classes through colleges that have those agreements in place. So if we have a dual credit agreement with St. Louis Community College, that college would set up a process for students to basically not have to pay for those college classes if they meet certain guidelines for A+. The challenge is that the money will be distributed to college students first, and then kind of whatever's left can go to the high school students, and it is an income-based piece. But several community colleges, St. Louis Community College being one of them, have already started allowing up to 6 hours of dual credit free through them as kind of a scholarship program in place. So this codifies that a little bit and allows students to access that money a little bit early based on need. JHD was mentioned before with Dr. Condon. This actually now makes board members mandated reporters as well for sexual abuse, child abuse, and neglect. So the policy is changed to reflect changes in House Bill 604, which seems to be a pretty heavy House bill that covered a lot of things. But this does make board members mandated reporters, and that training that was discussed will be required. 2.5-hour training for new board members, and then an hour refresher every year in this particular area. And then the last policy, JO student records, really was updated to remove place of birth from that directory information. There was no practical reason for it. And so they removed that. And then there is a little bit of language in student records just regarding that school districts are not going to mediate divorce disputes when it comes to parents and access, but that schools are required to follow court paperwork when it comes to access to student records. So for example, a divorce decree may dictate from courts that a parent may not have access to certain records that normally they would. So that is captured in that policy as well.
Dr. Bailey, I appreciate you mentioning that JGH, this is the first time board members have been named as also being mandatory reporters, and the MSBA requires that BHA policy, so 1 hour per year of training, and the board can actually do it as a group if we would like. But thank you.
Exactly.
Thank you. Any other questions or clarifications needed?
So I have a question. Is that it? Is that the last policy, Michelle?
That's it.
So how did we get so many coming at us in one hit here?
Well, MSBA sends them in chunks. You noticed like the calendar one, we knew about that change back in August or back last, but then they take the laws that have changed to all the different policies and send them in one big chunk. We've never gotten this many before. And so, you know, I thought it would be helpful to use a workshop to go over all of these, to consider this our lodging, our first reading of the policies, and then those would go to the board to be made board meeting. So every school district received these policies in one big chunk.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to be careful going forward that, you know, when lodging is one thing, but to vote and be able to have a discussion, it's just mentally impossible to do 26 policies at a board meeting if you really want to have any meaningful discussion or debate or discernment. So, you know, it is what it is, but I would just encourage, if we see something like that coming, maybe chunk them up in 5, because just to read them, to process them, to think about them, it doesn't look impossibly do that at a board meeting. So going forward, if we could try to maybe break them up.
I think this one is very unique because that House Bill 6 over many laws, and we have to follow the law. So they quickly had to make the policy, and in some of these policies they say we don't want to repeat the law verbatim, so we can use some policy outlines. So I think this is the first time I've ever seen such a large batch from MSBA in all my years.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, you're right. Go ahead, Chad.
No, I'm good. I just be careful that this doesn't become a habit. Yeah, that'd be good feedback back to Emma. And then in terms of the actual vote, because some of these have some pretty heavy topics in them. You know, these aren't just check the box. Some of them are, but not all of them.
Right.
That's true.
Right.
So,
well, and just so you guys know and are aware, MSBA, I've been doing a lot of work with them lately. The MSBA has started a kind of a board for presidents. It's like a board where presidents can log on and then have kind of dialogue and each other and let each other know what's going on in their district. So we started that, and so I'll log on as I get information. I'll pass it on to you guys. Also, that kind of led to more discussion. I had a discussion with Susan Dole about some of the policy changes, and there are things coming down the pike that are they're going to be very involved. They're things like how will they hold band class, how will they hold it? There are things that they're currently talking about that we're going to have to decide on that will be even huge in light of COVID-19. So just so you guys are aware, this is these are a lot, and Chad, you're spot on, but know that we're going to have a lot more coming as COVID-19, as we deal with that and try to get back to some normal life.
Chad, would it be helpful at the board meeting in May to chunk these and vote on them by category?
Yeah, and I just want to take a step back. Listen, I get it. This is kind of a unique situation. It's a one-off. If we see this happening more and more, yes, we need to chunk them. We need to have the ability to actually discuss them. Have to chunk them. It's challenging. I get it. So yes. I just want to make sure that we're not doing anything to self-perpetuate it, meaning us on this call, not personally, just the board. And because it took me 2 hours. I literally read every one. It took 2 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's another thing. The other districts are also in the same spot. And so there will be another gathering of the St. Louis area professional learning community for our board members in May. It'll be a Zoom, and like Darnell said, so everybody's all of our board members are. So I will send you an invitation. It should be maybe May 2nd. I'm not exactly sure, and then this is a good point, because how's everybody handling all this? So we can get some feedback from the other board members as well.
Thank you.
And to that point, Michelle, it may be good when you introduce these at our next meeting, which will be a Zoom meeting, to just hit it off to Chad's point, saying these are a lot that have come at us. This is why, or whatever, because it would be good to have it on how this kind of came together. Not to rehash too much, but to recap it for the public when we have more people on.
Thank you for saying that, Jennifer, because one of my concerns was, as a citizen, our job as a board member is to do policy work, and we can't take it lightly. And I don't want the perception to be, oh, here's 26. You're spot on.
Yeah, right. So I
agree.
think you might want to start out with the House Bill 604, which I can send you a copy, because it's very long and all these things are on it. And I think then the community might understand as well. But I like the way you looked them up by personnel issues, hiring issues, microfinance issues. I had a couple questions on those. I'll email them in, but I think that helps you understand if you do it.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
Thank you.
The other piece to this is, I think anytime, as Chad said, one of our jobs is to learn and do policy work. And so I think that it would be wise of us to kind of set up a structure. I know that we lodge them and we do this and we do that structure where, we have the time to ask the questions with each other here, because we can email all the questions in. But if Angie asks a question, sometimes I like to hear what Angie is asking, because I'm like, oh, it makes me think of this, or it makes me. So not only just, I think that we need more conversation and discussion around these policies. Okay, policy moving forward.
So do you think we can provide that in the next board meeting if I chunk them category, like the B policies, describe them, and then allow the board members a little bit of time to discuss, and then it would go for a vote?
So
yeah, I think that one of the things that might be helpful for you all, that if we as board members can kind of send in, but then we do have, if there's one that is in particular, that we do have a discussion around it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I think it's important, Michelle, that you do chunk them up. You do explain publicly why this is happening. And number 3, there's enough time to do it, that we don't have an agenda that is jam-packed with 20 things and you're not allowed to do it. So again, hopefully this doesn't become a habit. So we'll have to kind of learn as we go on this first round, but definitely there's value in hearing through discussion. We don't want to turn this into, we all email questions and we assume everything's okay. I think that's dangerous ground. It's a way to manage. I think it's going to get us in trouble.
And again, I think to Chad's point that maybe we need to be giving MSBA this feedback. And I get that they are react to change in laws, but if there's some other way to kind of manage it.
Well, I think MSBA sent these to correspond with the law, so I'll get to Bill 604 and send it to you all. And I think would merit some more discussion, as Chad says. Some of them are just, it is like the A+ funding or, those kind of things. So maybe there are a few most important ones, if anyone feels one, or I know there's a few that more than others that I'm more concerned about, that we could kind of address those maybe in the meeting. Send that House bill summary to everyone, have a look at it if that would help.
Yeah, it seemed to me like there were some of the changes are just, these changes kind of have to happen by state statute reasons, and others were like, there's a change in the law that now permits us to make change. And maybe the prevailing wage one is one that falls into that category where it warrants further discussion of the law. Allows it necessarily mean that we as Kirkwood School District want to make that change.
Right. And Mark, you and I were in a session together about the prevailing the rural districts, so that's one of those issues that doesn't affect us too much, but it came from there.
Yeah. On Mark and Angie, but like when it comes to protection of our children regarding sexual assault in adults and volunteers, like that's a pretty big deal.
Yeah, and I agree. That training, I really think it might be helpful to do it as a board at the point it's required. We still have 20 more months, I think, or so I could check the details, but I think we should get some training about what to do, because now that we are mandatory reporters, okay, who do we call? And I know there's a person at the district, but for me, and I think for all of us, we'd feel better if we knew exactly the procedure and made sure we knew everything for us.
That's true, and it was part of this year's training. It started already. The hour that they had on there was the online portion, but if we did it as a team, like I guess it would. I could see a little more impact if we did, as opposed to just being a one-off online, thing you do on your own. So I could see that. But also as a board, if we need to do, there's a lot of policies. Maybe we need to have a meeting and we need to put it together. But we all have to be okay with that. Like another meeting, add it to our calendar. But if we're saying, hey, we got to chunk some things up, we just got to understand what's involved.
And just to clarify, and Cindy, correct me if I'm wrong, when you're a mandated reporter, you don't have to let someone in the district know. You're making the phone call.
That's
just
correct.
As if you're a teacher, you're a mandated reporter, you make the phone call, correct?
Correct. You cannot pass that duty off to anybody else. You have to call yourself.
Yep. And this is really important, because often members don't realize, or people don't realize it's your duty to make that call. That was my PSA.
Thanks, Jean Marie.
I think we beat it to death. Thanks for humoring me, but that was my comment. So,
Thank you.
All righty. Whatever we have. Thank you, guys.
I do have one more quick question.
Okay.
I'll use my extended rookie status with the election being delayed. Do we have to make some of these policy changes, like the school year one was one that jumped out at me. I mean, obviously we're going to comply with whatever the statute is, but do we kind of have to also change our policy? Or can we just have the policy of complying with the state law, and as soon as the state law is changed again, we are compliant still?
A lot of times what MSBA does is they strip the redundancy, the language out of the policy, and they point back to the statute or the legislation itself. We've seen them trying to clean that up so they don't have to change a policy every year when the legislation changes. So that's typically what we've seen them cleaning up policies in the past few years. But we do, I think our policies stated the specifics in it. So we either have to put the new information in or redirect it back to the legislation. I mean, either or.
Yeah, it would seem like our policy on the start date should just be, you know, it would be consistent with state law, and there's no reason to, you know, identify the current specific date that means.
Yeah, that's, I mean, that's a good point.
Yeah, it's a good point, but you know, that was a contentious issue, that school start date, this one, so we probably, you know, you and I were there together, Mr. Boyko. So I think we're going to have to change it.
Interesting piece of information. I was in a meeting on Friday, and you may have read in the newspaper, the superintendent in St. Louis schools filed for permission to start school earlier next year because of COVID, and he was denied that ability to do so. So a lot of schools are looking at possibly holding summer school in early August to try to recapture some of what may be lost over the summer and through online learning. So
I didn't see where they denied it, Dr. Cudman.
He only found out Friday, and he shared that in our superintendent's meeting.
Wow, that's pretty crazy.
Mm-hmm. So, well, thank you everyone for listening. I know that was a lot to go through. Originally, the policies were the only thing that I had planned for the agenda, but other things were added that were also important. So sometimes it's hard to pare things down when there are lots of important things going on. So thanks everybody for your attention and your time. I appreciate it.
All righty. Thank you. Thank you, Dr.
Thank
Cudman.
you.
Thank you, board members. Thank you, staff. See you guys.
All right. Thank you.